HOA Karen called cops on me for moving into my lake cabin. Now her HOA's banned forever. It was supposed to be a quiet, fresh start. A peaceful morning beside the still waters of Silver Pine Lake. The kind of day you dream about after years of stress and city noise. I'd just pulled up in my moving truck, the sun barely peeking. Over the trees, the scent of pine and lake water wrapping around me like a welcome hug. My late Uncle Frank had left me this old but sturdy cabin in his will, and after months of paperwork and grief, I was finally here, ready to breathe again. But that serenity lasted all of 10 minutes. The morning calm shattered with the sharp wail of sirens. I froze mid-step on the dock, still clutching a cardboard box labeled Kitchen Fragile. 2 police cruisers came barreling down the gravel road, kicking up clouds of dust as they screeched to a halt beside my truck. And then she appeared. A woman in a blinding neon pink visor marched straight toward the officers, clipboard in one, hand like a battle flag, the other pointing squarely at me. "That's him!" she shrieked, her voice slicing through the air like a fire alarm. "He's trespassing on private property. I demand you arrest him immediately. He's been here since 6 this morning, making noise disturbing the peace." Behind her, a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, robes, slippers, coffee mugs still in hand, gawking like they were watching a live episode of a reality show. The older officer looked between us with a calm, practiced expression, while his younger partner seemed to be barely suppressing a smirk. "Ma'am, can you explain what's going on here?" That's when I learned her name, Carol Petton, or as the neighbors apparently knew her, the self-appointed queen of the Lakeshore Estates HOA. She puffed herself up like an angry peacock, pink, tracksuit stretching at the seams, and declared with full authority, "This man is illegally occupying this cabin. He has no permits, no board approval, and he's violating at least 17 community bylaws. I have them all documented." She slammed the clipboard into the officer's hand like it was a murder weapon. I set my box down carefully and pulled out my phone. "Officer, I'm Drew Sullivan. I own this property. I just closed on it last week. Here's the deed. It's in my name. This cabin belonged to my uncle. It's mine now." The officer studied the document while Carol's face started to take on the color of a boiled beet. "That's impossible," she screeched. "Every property on this lake falls under our HOA jurisdiction. I personally oversee all new residents, and this man never submitted an application." The officer looked at her again, and then gently handed the clipboard back. "Ma'am, this gentleman owns the property. Unless you have evidence of criminal activity, there's nothing we can do here." Carol wasn't done. "He hasn't paid his HOA fees. He hasn't attended the mandatory orientation. His moving truck is blocking the scenic view." The younger officer leaned in. "Is his property part of your HOA, ma'am?" "Of course," she snapped. "Everything within a mile of Lakeshore Estates belongs to us." I finally stepped in. "Actually, this cabin predates your entire neighborhood by at least 40 years. My uncle never joined any HOA. Never had to." Carol's eyes narrowed behind rhinestone-studded sunglasses. "We'll see about that, Mr. Sullivan. Nobody makes a fool of Carol Petton. Nobody." As she stormed off, her hot pink sneakers squeaking. Against the gravel, I noticed a few neighbors lingering. An elderly man gave me a sympathetic nod. A younger couple quickly looked away. The invisible battle lines had already been drawn. Once the police left with a quiet good luck from the younger officer, Carol set up camp. I'm not kidding. She dragged over a folding chair, a small table, and a thermos that smelled suspiciously, like vanilla latte. Then she pulled out what looked like a wildlife documentary-grade telephoto lens and began snapping pictures of everything. My truck, my boxes, even the sandwich I had left on the porch railing. That's improperly stored. "Food," she called out. "Health code violation. Wildlife attraction, potential bear hazard." I looked at the sandwich, then back at her. "It's a turkey on rye, Carol." "That's President Petton to you," she snapped, furiously scribbling on her clipboard. "And that's another violation. Failure to address HOA leadership with proper titles, that's a $50 fine." And that was just day 1. Over the next 3 days, Carol transformed into a one-woman HOA Gestapo. Every morning without fail, she arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, armed with a fresh list of infractions. My dock was allegedly 2 inches too long. My trash bins were the wrong color. The movers had left tire tracks on the gravel road. "These infractions carry serious fines," she said, handing me a stack of papers, amateur legal documents complete with Comic Sans font and clip art. Borders, $900 for unauthorized dock usage, $600 for non-compliant trash containers, $200 for damage to the community road. I tried to be civil. "Carol, I've told you I'm not in your HOA. These fines don't apply to me." She gave a rusty laugh. "Oh, you sweet summer child. Your uncle might have gotten away with it, but I've been president for 6 years. Things have changed." She wasn't wrong, but not in the way she thought. That night, I sat down with a cup of coffee and decided it was time to dig deeper. The county clerk's office had digitized records going back decades. What I found made my jaw drop. Not only was my property never part of the HOA, but the association had been systematically encroaching on public land for years. Their so-called private beach was built on state-protected shoreline. Their exclusive boat launch extended into protected wetlands. Their scenic walking trail cut through public land they didn't even own. But the real smoking gun? A series of emails between Carol and the previous HOA board. They outlined a strategy to expand the HOA's territory by bullying non-member properties into compliance, using fines, pressure, and fabricated rules. Armed with these discoveries, I knew what I had to do. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of purpose. My phone buzzed with call logs, email drafts, and agency contacts. I had everything I needed: the emails, the maps, the public land violations, and I was ready to use them. My first call was to the State Environmental Protection Agency. The woman on the line got very quiet when I explained that a private HOA had built structures on state-protected wetlands. She asked for documentation. I sent everything. Then the county commissioner's office. Then the Department of Natural Resources. By the end of the day, I had 3 separate agencies scheduling visits to the Lakeshore Estates HOA properties. Meanwhile, Carol was busy escalating her nonsense with the same manic energy you'd expect from a cartoon villain. I returned from a grocery run to find bright orange caution tape crisscrossing my dock like a crime scene. A laminated notice was nailed to a tree, accusing me of violation 473B, unauthorized watercraft mooring. I didn't even own a boat, but logic wasn't exactly Carol's strong suit. To make matters worse, she had recruited a full-on compliance committee. 3 women who followed her around like obedient ducklings, all wearing matching visors. They took shifts patrolling the edge of my property, snapping photos, jotting notes, pretending to measure grass length with rulers. When I grilled burgers, they recorded excessive smoke emissions. When I hammered a loose porch board, they cited unauthorized construction. And then came the decibel meter. One afternoon, I walked out to the dock and heard the unmistakable beep, beep, beep of a sound meter. 82 decibels, Carol announced triumphantly. That's over our peaceful enjoyment limit of 75. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Carol, that's the same volume as a garbage disposal. Are you seriously trying to find me for walking? It's not walking, she snapped. It's aggressive stomping with intent to disturb. She waved the meter like a magic wand, and her minions all nodded in synchronized approval. That was it. The last ounce of my patience drained out of me. I grabbed my folder, reviewed my notes, and decided it was time to unleash the counteroffensive. The first inspector showed up 2 days later. Carol rushed out with her usual clipboard, bright smile, and a fresh coat of lip gloss. That smile didn't last long. I'm here from the State Environmental Protection Agency, the man said, showing credentials. We received a complaint about unauthorized structures in wetland zones. I watched from my porch with coffee in hand as he took soil samples from their beach, photographed the boat launch, and measured everything down to the inch. That was only the beginning. The county surveyor arrived next, followed by the Public Access Committee, who investigated blocked lake paths. Every visit left Carol looking more and more frantic, her visor tilted, her clipboard shaking. She called an emergency HOA meeting, and I decided to attend as a concerned neighbor. The moment I walked into the Lakeshore Estates clubhouse, the tension in the air was thicker than lake fog. Residents were whispering. Some looked nervous. Others looked angry. Carol stood at the front trying to project authority but visibly unraveling. "This is obviously a harassment campaign," she announced, gesturing wildly toward me. "Our newest resident has been calling in fake inspectors to intimidate us. He's bitter, he's vindictive, and he refuses to pay his fair share." A man in the front row raised his hand. "Carol, is it true the state's fining us $50,000 for wetland violations?" Carol went pale. "That's under negotiation." "What about the cease and desist order for the beach?" a woman called out. "My kids love that beach." "Temporary setback," Carol barked, eyes darting. "My husband's cousin is a lawyer and he says we can appeal," she added desperately. I raised my hand. "May I speak?" Carol's glare could have melted steel. "You're not a member. You don't get to speak." But before she could slam the gavel, the treasurer stood up. "Given that this affects the entire lake community, I think we should hear him out." I walked to the front, opened my folder, and began distributing copies of lake surveys, state findings, and most importantly, Carol's own emails. "Your HOA," I said clearly, "has been illegally claiming authority over properties and land you don't own. My cabin, 3 other vintage homes on the North Shore, and nearly 2 acres of state-protected waterfront have all been bullied and fined without any legal standing." The room erupted. Residents stood up, shouting questions. Board members flipped, through pages with growing horror. One guy just kept muttering, "Oh my God," under his breath. Carol slammed the gavel so hard the head flew off and hit the refreshment table, sending lemonade everywhere. "Lies," she shrieked. "This man is a troublemaker, a government plant. This is a conspiracy." The treasurer held up one of the emails. "Carol, this is your account. You literally wrote, 'Establish dominance over non-compliant shoreline properties through persistent enforcement.' That's taken out of context," she screamed, her voice climbing into a dog whistle pitch. "Really?" Another board member chimed in. "Because the subject line says Operation Total Lake Control." That broke the dam. Residents started shouting out their own horror stories. Janet waved a paper. $600 because my kayak was the wrong shade of blue. Tom from Unit 12. "She fined me for my garden gnome's aggressive facial expression." Sally. "I got a violation for non-approved wildlife species because birds liked my feet or too much." The floodgates opened. What was once Carol's obedient kingdom had turned into open revolt. And the final blow came not from me, but from the courtroom. Weeks later, the judge's ruling was swift and brutal. The Lakeshore Estates HOA was found guilty of violating multiple state and environmental regulations. They were ordered to remove all illegal structures from public land within 60 days. They were banned from claiming authority over any land not explicitly deeded to the HOA. And the association was fined $175,000. But Carol's punishment was the cherry on top. The judge leaned forward and said, "Due to documented harassment, misrepresentation, and abuse of power, Miss Carol Peaton is hereby barred from holding any HOA leadership role for the next 10 years. Carol's face contorted in horror. "You can't do this, I am the HOA." She lunged for the bench, screaming, "I'll sue all of you. I'll appeal. This isn't over." Security intervened. Her visor flew off as her husband tried to restrain her. The judge calmly slammed the gavel one last time. "Ms. Peaton, you are in contempt. That's an additional $5,000 fine." She collapsed into her chair, mouth opening and closing like a beached fish, while her neighbors quietly filed out, free, at last. And Silver Pine Lake? It's peaceful again. No more pink visors, no more made-up violations, just birds, trees, and the occasional kayak, regardless of what color it is. And me? Let's just say that turkey sandwich never tasted so good.